Most people think the number that changes your life is $1 million. $1 million in the bank, financial freedom, early retirement, the whole dream. But in reality, most lives don't change at $1 million. They change much earlier, at $10,000. And not because 10,000 makes you rich. It doesn't. In most cities, it barely covers a few months of expenses. But something strange happens when you cross that line. Your relationship with money changes. Your decisions change. Even the way you think about risk starts to shift. And once that shift happens, your financial life tends to move in a very different direction. Here's the weird part. Most people never reach that point. Not because 10,000 is impossible, but because they never realize how important the first safety net actually is. They focus on investing. They focus on getting rich. They watch videos about stock picking, crypto trends, and retiring early. But they skip the one milestone that quietly changes everything, the $10,000 safety net. Because money doesn't just change what you can buy. It changes how you behave. And $10,000 is often the exact point where survival thinking starts turning into strategic thinking. Before we go further, quick introduction. I'm Robert, and I spend a ridiculous amount of time thinking about money, not just how to earn it, but why some people quietly build wealth over time, while others keep repeating the same financial mistakes year after year. If you're curious about the psychology behind money and want to understand how wealth actually grows instead of just hoping things will somehow work out, you're in the right place. And if this video ends up changing the way you look at money, go ahead and subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss the next one. Now let's get back to that $10,000 line. Imagine two people. Person A has $247 in their bank account. Person B has $10,000 sitting quietly in a savings account. Both earn the same salary. Both live in the same apartment building. Both pay the same rent. On paper, they look almost identical. But psychologically, they live in completely different worlds. Person A lives in what economists sometimes call a scarcity loop. Every decision feels urgent. The car makes a weird noise. The brain goes straight to panic. The boss sends a message asking for a meeting. Heart rate increases. The landlord emails about a rent increase. Instant stress. When your margin is zero, every small problem feels like a crisis. And that changes how people behave. They take jobs they hate because they can't risk leaving. They avoid negotiating salaries because they can't risk conflict. They delay fixing problems because they can't afford surprises. And slowly, without realizing it, their financial life becomes reactive instead of intentional. They're constantly responding to emergencies. Now look at person B. Same job, same rent, same life. But there's $10,000 sitting quietly in the background. That money's not there to buy luxury. It's there to buy breathing room. And breathing room is one of the most powerful financial advantages you can have. Because when you have margin, your brain works differently. Psychologists studying decision-making have noticed something interesting. When people operate under financial pressure, their cognitive bandwidth shrinks. They become more short-term focused, more reactive, more risk-averse in the wrong places. It's not about intelligence, it's about mental load. Imagine trying to play chess while someone keeps tapping you on the shoulder every 5 seconds. That's what financial stress does to your thinking. But when you remove just a little bit of that pressure, the brain suddenly has space again. And that's exactly what a $10,000 safety net creates. Space. The ability to pause. The ability to think. And that small shift creates a chain reaction of better decisions. Let's talk about the first change most people notice. Confidence. Not loud, flashy confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that shows up in conversations. The kind that affects how you negotiate, how you walk into interviews, how you respond to opportunities. When you have zero savings, every paycheck feels like oxygen. You can't risk losing it, which means your job controls you more than you control it. But when you have $10,000 sitting behind you, something subtle happens. You're no longer negotiating from desperation. You're negotiating from stability. Suddenly, you can say things like, I need to think about that offer. I'd like to discuss compensation. I'm not sure this role is the right fit. Those sentences are almost impossible to say when your bank account is on life support, but they become very easy when you know you have months of breathing room. And that changes career trajectories more than people realize. A lot of salary growth doesn't come from working harder. It comes from having the freedom to choose better opportunities. And freedom requires margin. This is why many career coaches quietly tell people something simple. Your first goal isn't investing, it's stability. Because investing money while living paycheck to paycheck is like trying to build a house during an earthquake. The foundation matters first, and $10,000 is often the first real foundation. Now let's talk about something even more powerful, opportunity. Most people think opportunity shows up with warning. It doesn't. It shows up randomly. A friend tells you about a new business idea. A job opening appears at a growing company. A course or certification could change your career path. A chance to move to a better city appears. But here's the problem. Opportunity almost always requires a temporary cost. Maybe you need to move. Maybe you need to take a short pay cut. Maybe you need time to learn something new. And if your bank account is empty, you can't say yes. Not because the opportunity is bad, but because survival comes first. $10,000 doesn't just cover emergencies. It allows you to say yes to things most people have to decline. It's the difference between thinking, I wish I could try that, and saying, let's see where this goes. And over a lifetime, those small yes decisions compound dramatically. Another thing the $10,000 safety net changes is your tolerance for uncertainty. Most people think successful people love risk. That's not actually true. Successful people manage risk. And managing risk requires a buffer. Think about starting a small side business. Without savings, every experiment feels dangerous. If it fails, the consequences are immediate. Bills still exist, rent still exists, food still exists. But with a safety net, failure becomes information instead of disaster. You can test things, try things, learn faster. This is why many entrepreneurs quietly save money before taking bigger career swings. Not because they're afraid, but because they understand the math of resilience. A safety net doesn't remove risk, it absorbs it, and that changes behavior in powerful ways. Now here's another hidden effect that almost nobody talks about: the spending filter. When people first build a $10,000 safety net, they suddenly become weirdly protective of it. Something psychological happens. That number starts to feel like a shield. You don't want to break it unless you absolutely have to. So your brain starts evaluating purchases differently. A new phone isn't just $900 anymore, it's almost 10% of my safety net. That mental shift quietly kills a lot of unnecessary spending. Not through discipline, through awareness. It's a completely different mental model. Instead of asking, can I afford this? You start asking, is this worth weakening my safety net? That question alone saves people thousands of dollars over time. And then something even more interesting happens. Once people reach 10,000, the next milestones start coming faster. Because stability creates momentum. When emergencies happen, they don't destroy progress anymore. A car repair becomes an inconvenience instead of a financial reset. A medical bill becomes manageable instead of catastrophic. The system keeps moving forward. Think of it like climbing a mountain. At the bottom, every step slides back. But once you reach stable ground, your steps start sticking. That's the $10,000 point. Stable ground. Not rich, not financially free, but no longer financially fragile. And avoiding fragility is actually one of the most underrated financial goals in the world, because fragility keeps people stuck. Now there's one more reason this number matters so much. It changes your time horizon. When people live paycheck to paycheck, they operate in very short timelines. This week, this month, maybe the next bill. Long-term planning feels abstract because short-term survival dominates everything. But once a safety net exists, the brain finally has permission to think further ahead. 6 months? 1 year? 5 years? Suddenly investing makes sense. Suddenly career planning makes sense. Suddenly delayed gratification becomes easier. Because you're not constantly putting out fires anymore, you're building. And building requires stability. This is why many financial planners quietly prioritize emergency savings before anything else, even before investing. Not because investing isn't important, but because a fragile system collapses under pressure, and life always applies pressure. Cars break, jobs change, health surprises happen, markets crash. $10,000 doesn't prevent these events, but it prevents them from knocking you back to zero. And that alone can change the entire direction of a financial life. But there's an important detail most people misunderstand. The power of the safety net isn't the money itself. It's the behavior it unlocks. Better negotiations, better opportunities, smarter risk-taking, clearer thinking, longer time horizons, all triggered by a relatively small cushion. Which raises an interesting question. If $10,000 can create that much stability, what happens at 20, 50, 100,000? The same pattern continues. More margin, more options, more control over your time and decisions. But it all starts with the first layer of protection. And most people underestimate how life-changing that first layer really is. Because from the outside, $10,000 doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't buy luxury cars. It doesn't buy beachfront property. It doesn't impress anyone on social media. But internally, it changes the entire system, your system. And once your system becomes stable, progress becomes dramatically easier. So if you're early in your financial journey, chasing complicated strategies might not be the move right now. The real milestone might be much simpler. $10,000, not for status, not for investing, just sitting there, quiet, patient, ready. Because sometimes the biggest financial upgrade isn't becoming rich. It's simply no longer being one emergency away from broke.